Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Awakening Summit. I think it's like the 7th day, which is pretty incredible. Hasn't it flown?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is really going fast. And I get the honor of speaking to the amazing Sierra today. So welcome, Sierra.
So happy to be here, Hollis, with you, in particular with you, and with everyone. The women who have spoken so far have been incredible. The other co-authors of Awakening. It's really great to get another level to connect with one another and to share it with so many amazing people. So I'm really jazzed to be here this morning.
Yeah, so let's jump onto your topic. So I am going to read your quick bio, and I love how in the beginning when we were talking, you said you're a human in development, as we all are. So, but Sierra is a student of neuroscience, psychology, and human development. She's an author. She's a mother. She was raised by 2 Buddhists, and her philosophy emerged through her study to become a Reiki master, yoga teacher, resilience mentor, and leadership coach. She has many other titles. The list could go on. The chapter of your book is called Conscious Parenting, Profound Implications from Micro Shifts and Micro Adjustments. And tell us about that. What is conscious parenting?
Great question. With so many roles that women inhabit, there comes with all of these expectations of how to do it, and that there's right ways and wrong ways. But even if you do all the right ways, there's always a catch-22. And if you do this right, then you're doing this another part of it wrong. It's just a cluster, basically. And to go into parenting, I mean, a lot of us go into it unintentionally. I will admit that I found myself becoming a parent without being like, I've got all my ducks in a row.
Whoever does have their ducks in a row. I mean,
and that's the thing. Like, even if you're like, I'm established and I'm stable and I have all the things that I think I'm supposed to have in place and a loving, healthy partner and this and that, we're never ready, right? And well, you can't have all your ducks in a row, but there's a storyline that you should. And this goes to the core of everything. Conscious parenting is the chapter that I wrote in Awakening, because my daughter's 5, and her arrival in my life taught me so much and then invited me to learn a lot, and not in the way that I thought, right? Not getting my ducks in a row is not like that. She didn't really help me get, a 401k or a loving partner, for example. But her arrival fueled something in me to connect with myself in a different way. And this is what conscious parenting is about. And this is what all the work that I bring in my women's circles, in my one-on-one coaching, and in all of the writing that I'm doing and speaking. It's really about witnessing ourselves, being aware of ourselves. And so when I'm having a meltdown because I like this, that, and the other thing, I haven't slept, or this is wrong, like out of place, and this is out of place, and I'm cranky with my child, at least I'm like, oh, this is me being cranky and short-tempered with this small person in my life. And then I can just say to her, Mommy is this right now. How are you? And so I'm trying to model for her, like you said, like, I'm a human in development. I'm in process. There is no done beyond death, actually. Like, that's that when this chapter is over, that's done. But I don't expect to like have it all figured out. I don't ever expect to have all of my shit together. I don't want to. And for me, that was a huge revelation when I was like, oh my God, if I ever arrived at this place that I'm so determined to get to and so cruel to myself about not being at, I would be bored out of my mind. I never want to have all my shit together. I always want to have something that I haven't figured out, something that I haven't mastered, something that I'm curious about, something that's gonna, you know, give me something to chew on.
Well, it's like we're learning. We're like, who wants that? I mean, you see those perfect parents, and behind closed doors, they're not like nobody is. But I love how you said like parenthood is so muddled with expectations. Placed on ourselves, and like you said, placed from society. But it's kind of like when you have children, they're your teachers, they're your mirrors, they're so many things. And I mean, when I was in jobs that I wasn't the happiest in, and I'd come home cranky, and I'd come home feeling so many emotions, and my daughter was old enough, she looked at me and said, just because you had a bad day, don't take it out on me.
Right.
And I was like, okay, just breathe. And at times that would retort a response from me, like, what do you mean I'm cranky?
Who are you to tell me I'm pissed off? I'm fine. Can't you tell by the tone of my voice?
But then when I could breathe and be like, you know what? She's exactly right. Like I am thinking, but I'm human.
And you taught her that. You taught her that she could say that. And you taught her not to do that, right? You taught her that taking your own emotions out on someone else is not what we do. You taught her that so that she could teach it back to you when you needed it. And conscious parenting, the subcategories in my chapter are about how we show up in and getting into the subtle, right? And that's why the micro shifts and the micro adjustments, it's paying attention to our thoughts, noticing our words, and then our actions, because they're all linked. Yeah. And if it's cluttered and crazy and busy and critical up in here, then my words and my behaviors are going to show up that way too. And I'm teaching my daughter all the time. I'm teaching her how to be and what's okay and what's not okay all the time, whether I mean to be teaching it to her or not. She is a little sponge, and for the last 5 years, she's been looking at me as like, this is how things are. This is her reality. And they learn whatever is in front of them. So if I don't have to be that perfect, but I can show her that self-reflection and tuning into the subtle. And then the micro shifts, when we're paying attention to that, oh, I'm having this like cyclical, self-critical, judgmental, whatever. I have a book coming out, so I'm really nervous, or I'm working way too hard. Let's look at that and examine why I am, throwing all of my energy into this thing and forgetting to eat well. When we can notice closer, we can then make the adjustments, and they don't need to be huge shifts. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think I'm bringing, where a lot of the messaging is still, even though a lot of people are like, yeah, I get that I'm not supposed to, we believe somehow that to have significant impact or make a big change, we have to take big action. Yeah. And every time I do that, it blows up in my face, usually because there's a part of me that's like, no, that's new, that's big, that's scary, it's not how we do things. And so I pull the rug out from under me. I self-sabotage because I've set an unhealthy, unrealistic goal.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's really a great point.
So the first book that I wrote is right behind me, How Change Really Happens. Mm-hmm. And it's about this, is that when we are trying to go from any point A to any point B, our story about how we get there, how we grow, how we learn, determines how successful we are. And most of us still unconsciously or consciously carry this story that, if I want to lose 20 pounds, then I should stop eating everything that's delicious, exercise my butt off, and, do all these things that I've never done before all at once. And I should do them for a long enough time. And I can, I cannot count for you how many times I've tried a strategy like that.
That's about a day, yeah.
I can do 3, But by 3, I am physically, emotionally miserable, and then will absolutely, you know, eat a quart of ice cream or something that makes sure that I never, like, I don't go back, and I can't stay on track. And for me, the opposite strategy, then actually I'm like, well, that didn't work 76 times. So what if I do it differently? And what if I drink an extra glass of water today and nothing else? What if I take 3 breaths before I speak? What if I, journal for 5 minutes before going to bed? The smallest things. And this is one of the things that really supports my clients to be fulfilled and self-aware and getting to be I don't even call it self-love. Call it like self-curious. Because self-love, again, feels like done for me. It feels like I've got all my shit together. Everything's perfect. And when I look in the mirror after like 14 years of this journey and exploration, I'm like, your thighs are wrinkly. What's going on there? That doesn't feel like self-love. And so then there's this whole story of like, oh my God, you've written a book and you're a total hypocrite and blah, 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 blah. And even this dialogue I'm having with myself seems a little not like self-love. Self-curious is like, okay, sweetheart, what's going on there? And that feels loving. The curiosity and the patience and the tenderness allows for me to keep having this thing instead of self-love is out there and you just did this thing that doesn't feel so loving, so you don't have this thing. It's a journey that I hope never ends. And so paying attention to our thoughts, getting aware of the subtle, and making the changes in the smallest way possible. This is one of the things I teach the women in my women's circle is, okay, you've identified something that it doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel right, you want to change it, or even you want to show up for yourself, you want to be kind to yourself today. What is the smallest thing you can and will do for yourself? Because you can do it because it's small. It's not overwhelming. You're like, I'm going to do all these things for myself today. No, just kidding. I'm actually going to like do none of them. Right. The smallest thing is doable. And it doesn't, I noticed it's like, I sort of have a trigger alert. If something feels too big, it like sets off my sort of like emotional autoimmune response of like, this is new, this is different, I don't want it. But it sort of stays under the radar. And I can do a lot of things under the radar. And if I do kindnesses for myself, little subtle shifts every day, then big changes happen. And that's the thing. If I don't want anyone, especially a parent, but women are really good at hearing some advice and then turning it around and making it really self-critical. And I laugh because I still do this. I'm like, oh, listen to all these incredible women. I should. I haven't got my shit together. I'm such a phony, blah, blah, blah. Like that? No. That response doesn't help anybody. And so what is the smallest thing that we can do for ourselves? And I want you to take a deep breath with that, because there's a lot of things that have to shift, and a lot of things that we have to sort of become aware of in order to let go of that story. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to solve a massive problem today if we recognize the problem, because that's not how change really happens. And that's why I wrote my first book. It's the coalescing of a lot of the tools that I end up teaching in my women's circle. So there's just this handy little guide so that we can, like you mentioned earlier, learn and grow throughout our lives. One of the major obstacles for learning and growing is the story about we're supposed to have it figured out already. Women come into circle and they're like, they're so embarrassed and they're so ashamed that they don't have their shit together, haven't figured it all out already. And they sort of whisper and admit, they're like, can I say this? And everyone's like, yeah, me too. I've been here for a minute and I figured out that I don't have it all figured out. And that's okay. And we're all in it together.
All in it together. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, we take that on, like you said, and like in motherhood, we're supposed to, you know, we get turned to, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? And a lot of times, I mean, I would be figuring stuff out along the way. And like, you know, we're doing this together. And I've had my kids say, well, when did you think that was going to happen? I'm like, I have no idea. You didn't come with a book. I didn't. Oh, let's see. When they were 13, this is supposed to happen. When they're like, we're going to have this conversation then. Like, you just don't know. But I want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about, because all of this of what we're talking about leads into your newest book, Dating Yourself.
Absolutely.
Which is putting you before other people, not saying that you're not paying attention to them, but actually refueling and fueling yourself in order to then fuel others. So please tell us about it.
And before, putting ourselves before others still carries for me that little, oh, can I do that?
Yeah.
So I think of it as at the center. I put myself at the center, and there's no before or after, but it's like, and this is, it all links together, right? How we learn, how we grow, how we change. There are a million, this is the thing though, there are a million books about how to be a good parent. But every time, and there's a million books about how to be a good woman and how to be a good this and how to, like, when we look at others to compare ourselves to some average or some person's assessment of the way to do it right, it's really easy to measure ourselves against that. And we're always going to be miserable and not right on target, because actually I don't want to be the average. I don't want to be the norm, which is just some mathematical made up, take all the experiences in all the world and compress them into this one thing that we're all then going to measure ourselves against. And none of us are going to be that. And so Date Yourself is the newest book, and it's another one of the core practices that I teach in my women's circle, because you introduced me as like Reiki master and doula and neuroscience, and a lot of people would be like, how do all those things fit together? And they, for the most part, people don't fuse them together where they really should. And so I've created a system that fuses and closes this perceived gap between science and spirituality. And dating ourselves is this process that I teach in my women's circles of, like I said earlier, it's like being curious about yourself. Like, who is this person? We are all of our roles of who we are to other people. Maybe we're all of our titles and all of our accomplishments. But as I wrote in Date Yourself, this new book, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really happy to be sharing it with the world.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's very much like becoming a parent again. It is a pregnancy and birth and then new motherhood process. But dating yourself is, we already know how to do some of this stuff. We're really good at it for others. Okay. We are excellent friends. We're really good at nurturing others, being sensitive to their needs and wants. But we have not practiced turning that skill towards ourselves.
Yeah.
And the first part is figuring out, well, who the hell is she? Yeah. Because as I wrote in here, I spent certainly the first 25 years of my life, maybe 30, really trying to figure out who you needed me to be and who you needed me to be. And what do I need to be for you so that you can like me and approve of me and like let me in. And And so there was no me outside of just trying to figure out who to be for everybody else. All of my energy went to that. And there was nothing left for me. And this is why becoming the center is so important. So we ask in my weekly women's circle, it's like, introduce yourself as you are today. And that forces each of us to check in, like, who am I today? I'm not the woman that showed up to circle last week because this and that has happened, because I'm in a different phase of my cycle, because, you know, and if we're not in the constant practice of checking in, like, who am I? Then how do we know what we want, what we need, how to take care of ourselves? Because ourselves are changing.
Yeah.
And if the last time I attended to my identity was like when I graduated from college or when I became a parent, that's not fair. Like, my daughter's changed significantly since I gave birth to her.
Right.
Guess what? So have I. And if I'm not checking in with me, then I'm attending to a woman who just gave birth to a baby when I got that motherhood identity, but that's not the case. So learning how to be curious about ourselves, and then the way that we are so good with others, the way that we'll be like, oh, aren't you interesting and curious? And oh yeah, of course you're flawed. All people are flawed, but now I like you, and I sort of like your flaws, and I can accept you as you are on your journey, never done. And when we turn that energy towards ourselves,
yeah,
that whole, like, I should have my shit together. I can't believe you didn't get it. Look at those thighs. Like, yeah, you have legs. They get you around. Those thighs gave birth to a baby, and you know, they climbed a mountain yesterday, and they, you know, they're awesome. And so thank you, thighs. And one of the things that I feel there's still some danger in falling into like the self-love trap. The same way that for years I romanticized relationships with other people. For years, I also romanticized what self-love would look like and feel like. And that, like, dating myself, oh, well, then I'm just going to think that I'm perfect all the time and da-da-da-da-da. No, we have to be really conscientious of every step along the way. I'm in a relationship with myself. When I recognized who I was underneath all the roles and all the responsibilities, I also saw that the person that I spend the most time with is me. I'm 24/7 for the rest of my life.
We're not like going anywhere. It's like here. So like yourself. It's where it's a relationship.
And liking yourself can still feel like a leap. For me, if I sort of walk you through the process, it was recognize that I am in a relationship, whether I like it or not, with me. That there's more than, I mean, gets very existential, and Eckhart Tolle talks about it in all of his books. It's like, well, there's me and there's the I am. And so, like, which is which? And it's not just one, right? There's a mind and a spirit and a body and a whole bunch of clutter and voices back in here. It's crowded. This me is very a crowded space. So recognizing the complexity and intricacies of self. Okay, I'm in a relationship with myself forever, longer than I will have a relationship with my daughter, longer than any partnership with another lover or person, forever, right? From beginning to end, this is the relationship I'm in the longest. My next realization was, so how is this relationship? Oh, it's really toxic. The things that I say to myself on a daily basis are crueler and more abusive, more neglectful than I would ever have with anybody else.
Right.
And so that's where, and then the next thing is, I want better. And then self-like comes much, much later, but recognizing I want and I deserve better. And that's the kind of thing that you can do for yourself to begin with.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can't call the police on yourself, and you can't have part of yourself arrested, and you can't leave that relationship, but you can change that relationship. And the reason, and self-love, again, it's not even the end point. It's not the goal. For one of the things that, after having written this book and now putting it out in the world, it's like, why does that matter? It's self-curiosity and self-care so that you can do your work in the world, so that you can be an attentive parent and be present with them and support them to the best of your ability, and no, not intentionally fuck them up, so that you can be healthy and happy in your own skin as it is. Not when you lose 30 pounds or not when you get 20 years younger, because baby, that's never going to happen. But like, love the skin that you're in and attract and welcome the love that you deserve. It's self-love is a step on, it's a constant lifelong journey, but it's not the end goal. It's so that you can, you know, more fully embody this life and more like just be juicier in this whole process.
Oh my God, I love that word, juicier. Could you please, we're getting close.
We are, I know. I thought that.
And I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you.
Absolutely.
Your invitation, so much juiciness here.
Juice, bring the juice. All right. So I have 2 invitations, actually. Anyone who's watching this live is being offered a free copy of Date Yourself. I'm going to send out a couple of copies today because I really want to share it with folks who are interested in getting in like a little bit more personal, putting themselves at the center of their own lives. And this book is full of actual practices, not just platitudes of like, oh, shouldn't you like yourself? It's, no, let's get real. Let's write some breakup letters with parts of ourselves, with old people. Let's burn that t-shirt that you've been saving from that guy from a million years ago. It's time to let it go and clear some space for some new things. So it's actual, real, practical tools, exercises that I have practiced myself with, that I've taught hundreds of women in Circle, so that we can have a different, evolving relationship with ourselves. So I want to share that book. And you could also just get it on Amazon. The accompanying journal that has a bunch of pages that go along with the exercises just finally got out on Amazon today. I've been like, when is it coming? When is it coming? It's this beautiful, like 54-page color journal. So I'm pretty excited to see what that looks like, actually. And the deepest invitation is to join me in Women's Circle, because once we have, the book is a great start, but showing up in Circle in the presence of other people, committing to yourself for an hour a week, that is you with yourself. That is you dating yourself, really showing up with what is, okay? In my Circle yesterday, a woman started off, she's like, well, let me tell you about this total mess that I just made and all of the things. And then I'm going to give myself permission to own it, accept it, and move through it. And everyone else there was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for owning that and sharing that, because guess what happened to me this week? It does not escape me that this is the new moon. And so we're watching this all together in the new moon. And the new moon energy is really interesting. And the full moon energy is really interesting. And women move through this like very full, very jubilant, very whatever, to this very quiet, very exhausted, very inner space every month. And to check in with ourselves week by week. So I have this Women's Circle, and you can join monthly. You can join for the year. A number of women have signed up this year being like, yeah, the world is gone full on and the holidays are coming. I need a space that is just for me. So I'm going to drop some links in the comments later about how to join Women's Circle, but there's it's like a 22% discount if you join this week. And if you want to check in with me, I have a bunch of stuff on Instagram and Facebook. Integral Women Mentoring is where to find me.
Perfect. So you're going to put all of this in the link so people
can
connect.
Links are just easier.
Sierra, this was an amazing half hour that just flew by. And thank you, listeners, for joining. And just, I mean, what's really going to stick with me throughout the day and the conscious part is small shifts. Doesn't have to be huge leaps, small shifts, and love the skin you're in. Yeah. Just love it. You're with yourself and just love it.
And that those two go really well together, right? By not expecting too much of yourself and being gentle, but also showing up in word and action for yourself. It's like,
yeah, I love that. Own, accept, and move through.
Yeah, exactly.
Own, accept, and move through it. So,
such a pleasure to be with you, Hollis. I love getting to do this.
Oh, so happy. And congratulations on all that's going on for you. Sending so much love.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.